I'm going to tell a story. I'm going to tell a story. More than 30 years ago, Carlos Castaneda published The Teachings of Don Juan, the story of a magical journey into the unknown. Under the tutelage of Don Juan Matos, a Huahin Indian sorcerer, the young anthropologist entered into another world and emerged to give readers glimpses of this non ordinary reality. He wrote 8 more books, most recently, The Art of Dreaming, which described Don Juan's teachings, methods, and his sorcery arts. Castaneda learned that for us to perceive any of the worlds that exist beside our own, not only do we have to covet them, but we need to have sufficient energy to seize them. Magical Passes offers the readers for the first time the key to this energetic conditioning. In this revolutionary new book, Castaneda reveals a series of body positions and physical movements that enabled various sorcerers and their apprentices to navigate their own sorcery journeys. By sharing the centuries old wisdom, which comes from a tradition stretching back over 27 generations, Castaneda makes it possible for readers to travel to some of those other realms, which are as real, unique, absolute, engulfing as our own world. I turn the page. Are you listening? To every one of the practitioners of tensegrity who, by relying their forces around it, have put me in touch with energetic formulations that were never available to Don Juan or the shamans of his lineage. Don Juan Matios, a master sorcerer, a Negual, a master sorcerer, are called when they are led. A group of their sorcerers introduced me to cognitive world of shamans who lived in Mexico in the ancient times. Don Juan Matios was an Indian who was born in Yuma, Arizona. His father was a Yaquia Indian, Sonora, Mexico, and his mother was presumably a Yuma Indian, Arizona. Don Juan lived in Arizona until he was 10 years old. He was taken by his father to Sorona, Mexico, where he caught in the endemic Huajia wars against the Mexicans. His father was killed, and as a 10-year-old child, Don Juan ended up in southern Mexico, where he grew up with relatives. At the age of 20, he came in contact with a master sorcerer. His name was Julian Osorio. He introduced Don Juan into a lineage of sorcerers that was purported to be 25 generations long. He was not an Indian at all, but the son of a European immigrant to Mexico. Don Juan related to me that the Nagual, Julian, had been an actor and that he was dashing, a person, a raconteur, a mime, adored by everybody, influential, commanding in one of his theatrical tours to the provinces. The actor Julian Osorio fell under the influence of another Nagual, Elias Ulloa, who transmitted to him the knowledge of his lineage of sorcerers. Écoutez, Don Juan Mateos, following the tradition of his lineage of shamans, taught some bodily movements, which he called magical passes, to his four disciples. We shall continue. Hey, you're listening. Oh, that's good. I shall continue. So, Don Juan, following the tradition of this lineage, the shamans taught some bodily movements which he called magical passes to his disciples. Taisha Abela, Florida Donna Gru, Carol Tiggs, and himself, Carlos Castaneda. He taught them to us the same spirit in which they had been taught for generations, with one notable departure. He eliminated excessive ritual which had surrounded the teaching and performances of these magical passes for generations. Don Juan comments in these respects, where that ritual had lost its impetus as new generations of practitioners became more interested in efficiency and functionalism. He recommended to me, however, that under no circumstances should I talk about the magical passes with any of his disciples or with people in general. His reasons were that the magical passes pertained exclusively to each person. Now, I have used the magical passes myself. It's about moving your body to heal. I shall continue. Don Juan comments in this respect, where that ritual had lost its impetus as as new generations of I do apologize, of practitioners became more interested in efficacy and functionalism. He recommended to me, however, that under no circumstances should I talk about the magical passes with any of his disciples, with other people in general. He reasons where that the magical passes pertained exclusively to each person, and that their effect was shattering. It was better to practice them without discussing them. So remember, when you move your body, it is essential that you do it in privacy. Don Juan Matios taught me everything he knew about the sorcerers of his lineage. He stated, asserted, affirmed, explained to me every nuance of his knowledge. Therefore, everything I say about the magical passes is a direct result of his instruction. The magical passes were not invented. They were discovered by the shamans of Don Juan lineage who lived in Mexico in ancient times. While they were in shamanistic states of heightened awareness, the discovery of the magical passes was quite accidental. I don't believe that. It wasn't accidental. It began a very simple query about the nature of an incredible sensation of well being. This is the point. It is about well being that those shamans experienced in those states of heightened awareness when they held certain bodily positions or when they moved their limbs in some specific manner. Their sensation of well being had been so intense that their drive to repeat these movements in their normal awareness became the focus of all their endeavors. Please, please listen. This is so important that we do this in our daily life. By all appearances, they succeeded in their task and they found themselves the possessors of a very complex series of movements that, when practiced, yielded them tremendous results in terms of mental physical prowess. In fact, results of performing these movements were so dramatic that they called them magical passes. They taught them for generations only to shaman initiates on a personal basis, following elaborate rituals and secret ceremonies. Now, secret ceremonies are only there for the spirits, the spiritual, the ones that are connected to the spiritual. Henceforth, Don Juan Matios, in teaching the magical passes, departed radically from tradition. Such a departure forced Don Juan to reformulate the pragmatic goal of the magical passes. He presented this goal to me not so much as the enhancement of the mental and the physical balance as it had been in the past, but as the practical possibility of redeployment of energy. He explained that such a departure was due to the influence of the two Naguas who had preceded him. It was the belief of the sorcerers of Don Juan lineage that there is an inherent amount of energy existing in each one of us. We all have this energy, by the way, so don't forget that. An amount which is not subject to the onslaught of outside forces for augmenting it or for decreasing it. They believe that this quantitative, sorry, I apologize. This quantity of energy was sufficient to accomplish something which those sorcerers deemed to be obsession, obviously, of every man and every woman on earth, breaking the parameters of normal perception. So Don Juan was convinced that our incapacity to break those parameters was induced by our culture and our social milieu. So he maintained that our culture and our social milieu deployed every bit of our inherent energy in fulfillment established behavioral patterns, which didn't allow us to break those parameters of normal perception. Why in the world would I or anyone else want to break those parameters? Hmm. Well, so I actually, because I've read this book over and over again, and I'm reading to you from a book. So I've done this spiritual questions. I asked Don Juan as well on occasion, and uh, this is Castaneda, by the way. If you didn't get that, why in the world would I or anyone else want to break those parameters? Castaneda asked Don Juan. Don Juan says, breaking those parameters is the unavoidable issue of mankind, he replied. Breaking them means the entrance into unthinkable worlds of pragmatic value, in no way different from the value of a world of everyday life. Regardless, whether or not we accept the premise, we are obsessed with breaking those parameters, and we fail miserably at it. Hence the profusion of drugs and stimulants and religious rituals and ceremonies among other men. Oh, modern men. So why do you think we have failed so miserably, Don Juan? Castellida asks. Don Juan says our failure to fulfill our subliminal wish. Is it due to the fact that we tackle it in a helter-skelter way? Our tools are too crude. They are equivalent to trying to bring down a wall by ramming it with a head. Man never considers this breakage in terms of energy. For sorcerers even, success is determined only by the accessibility or the inaccessibility of energy. Energy is the key point, folks. Since since it is impossible, he continued, to argue our inherent energy, the only avenue open for the sorcerers of ancient Mexico was the redeployment of the energy. So we have this energy inherently. We are energy. We are conscious energy. Since it's impossible, he continued, to argue our inherent energy, the only avenue open for the sorcerers of ancient Mexico was the redeployment of that energy. For them, this process of redeployment began with the magical passes and the way they affected the physical body. So when you move your body, this is what the magical passes is all about. It's moving your body with nature. I continue. Don Juan stressed in every way possible, while imparting his instruction, the fact the enormous emphasis the shamans of his lineage had put on physical prowess and mental well being had lasted to the present day. I was able to corroborate the truth of his statements by observing him and his 15 sorcerer companions. Their superb physical and mental balance was the most obvious feature about them. Don Juan replied when I asked directly why sorcerers put so much stock in the physical side of man. And to my total surprise, I always thought that he himself was a spiritual man. Shamans are not spiritual at all, Don Juan said. They are practical beings. It is a well known fact, however, that shamans are generally regarded as eccentric or even insane. Perhaps that is what makes you think that they are a spiritual being. They seem insane because they are always trying to explain things that cannot be explained. In the course of such futile attempts to give complete explanations that cannot be expleted under any circumstances, they lose all coherence and say inanities. You need a pliable body. If you want physical prowess and level headedness, he went on, these are the two most important issues in the lives of shamans because they bring forth sobriety, pragmatism, the only indispensable requisites for entering into other realms of perception. To navigate in a genuine way in the unknown necessitates an attitude of daring, but do not one of recklessness. In order to establish a balance between audacity and recklessness, a sorcerer has to be extremely sober, cautious, skillful, and in superb physical condition. Mark his words. But why in superb physical condition? Castaneda asks Don Juan. Isn't the desire or the will to journey into the unknown enough? Not in your pissy life, Don Juan replies, rather brusquely, just to conceive facing the unknown, much less enter into it, requires guts of steel and a body that would be capable of holding those guts. Would be what would be the point of being gutsy if you didn't have a mental alertness, physical prowess, and adequate muscles? The superb physical condition that Don Juan had steadily advocated from the first day of our association, the product of the rigorous execution of the magical passes, was by all indications the first step forward. The redeployment of our inherent energy. The redeployment of energy was, in Don Juan's view, the most crucial issue in the lives of shamans, as well as in the life of any individual. Redeployment of energy is a process which consists of transporting from one place to another energy which already exists within us. This energy has been displaced from centers of vitality in the body, which require that displaced energy in order to bring forth balance between mental alertness, physical prowess. The shamans of Don Juan's lineage were deeply engaged in the redeployment of their inherent energy. The involvement wasn't an intellectual endeavor, nor was it the production of induction or deduction or logical conclusion. It was the result of their ability to perceive energy as it flowed in the universe. And there you go. It's not really that complicated when you think about it. So the sorcerers called this ability to perceive energy as it flowed in the universe seeing. Don Juan explained. They described seeing as a state of heightened awareness in which the human body is capable of perceiving energy as a flow, a current, a wind like vibration. To see energy as it flows in the universe is the product of a momentary halt of the system of interpretation proper to human beings. What is this system of interpretation? Don Juan Castaneda asks. The shamans of ancient Mako found out, he replied, that every part of the human body is engaged in one way or another in turning the vibratory flow, this current of vibration, into some form of sensory input. The sum total of this bombardment of sensory input lost my point. Form of sensory input. The sum of this bombardment of sensory input is then human beings capable of perceiving, have a little laugh, perceiving the world the way they do. How do you perceive the world? To make the system of interpretation come to a halt, he went on, was the result of tremendous discipline and the part of the sorcerers of Mekhl. They called this halt seeing and made it the cornerstone of their knowledge. To see energy as it flowed in the universe was, for them, an essential tool that they employed in making their classic Tintin Tintin classificatory schemes because of the capacity. For instance, they conceived that the total universe available to the perception of human beings as an onion like affair. Onion like? Hmm. Consisting of thousands of layers. The daily world of human beings, they believed, is but one such layer. Consequently, they also believed that other layers are not only accessible to human perception, but are part of man's natural heritage. Another issue of tremendous value in the knowledge of these sorcerers, an issue which was also a consequence of their capacity to see energy as it flowed in the universe, was the discovery of the human energetic configuration. The human energetic configuration was them, a conglomerate of energy fields ag- agglutinated together by vibratory force that bound those energy fields into a luminous ball of energy. For the source of Don Juan's lineage, a human being as an oblong shape like an egg or a round shape like a ball. Thus they called them luminous eggs or luminous balls. Funny thing that, because the spirit actually shows itself as a ball, a luminous ball, by the way. This sphere of luminosity was considered by them to be our true self, true in the sense that it is irreducible in terms of energy. It is irreducible because the totality of human resources are engaged in the act of perceiving it directly as energy. And therefore, I thank you.